the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining me on this beautiful weekend. Although we're going to be talking about depressing stuff, but it is, in spite of that, a beautiful weekend. So thanks for joining the Yaron Brook Show. Today we're going to talk about Greta. We're going to talk about Greta Thunberg, who is this teenage who has become this true phenom. And a real phenomena out there in the world, and inspiring young people all over the world with her advocacy for doing something about the catastrophe of our time, the catastrophe of climate change. So I'm going to show you some video of her, and we're going to be talking about her. I have a feeling that I'm going to make a lot of people unhappy today because, obviously the left is going to hate me, but I'm probably going to treat Greta with more respect than most people on the right treat her with, and more respect than most people on the right think she should be treated with, because I've watched some videos, and I find her intriguing, and I don't feel sorry for her. Obviously, I think she's wrong. I think she's an advocate for evil ideas. I think she's too young to say that she's evil, but she's an advocate of evil ideas. But I feel sorry for an entire generation in the sense that she is a product of our educational system. She's a product of what all of us, almost all of us, have been teaching our kids for a generation now, for 30-something years. She is an example of somebody who takes her ideas seriously. She takes the ideas seriously. She takes the ideas that almost everybody has been teaching. Almost everybody in the world around us believes. She takes them seriously, gives them voice, and I think is inspiring a lot of other people who believe what she believes in terms of, and what she believes is, I mean, she's pretty good at this. I mean, what she says, I just want you to follow what the scientists tell us. Now, the science might be corrupt, certainly, and the scientists might be corrupt, but she is just a product of 30 plus years of this climate change, global warming, scaremongering, that world is going to end tomorrow attitude that has gone, for the most part, with the exception of a few people out there, for the most part, unchallenged in a serious way. Now, Alex Epstein challenges it, and people at the Heartland Institute challenge it, and there's a bunch of people out there challenging this, but they're a small minority. They're a small minority, a tiny minority as compared to the voices that you hear out there on a regular basis telling us how the world is going to end, or at the very least saying climate change is real and we're doing something about it, or we're going to do something about it, or something should be done about it. And the more consistent the voices are saying the world's going to end. And this starts at a very young age. It starts in kindergarten, where teachers are teaching this. And many of the teachers are just teaching it because, they're assuming it's science. And again, how many parents go to their teachers and challenge them and say, stop teaching that, it's not science. Or stop teaching it, that's controversial, and there's disagreement. And even if you teach it, what are the solutions? The solutions you're teaching are insane. The solutions you're teaching are more destructive than the problem. How many parents go and challenge the teachers? They don't. And how many people who are let's say, think that this whole debate about climate change is wrong, challenge it in a rational way versus the kind of reverse hysteria of, oh, all a bunch of communists, oh, the science is all wrong. Oh, I mean, instead of doing it actually rationally and discussing either if you're into the science, or if you're into the actual consequences of what these changes that they would want would actually have. Too much of the opposition is just as hysterical, as panicky. So Greta, in my view, is just a product of the world in which we live. She is just a teenager, an idealistic teenager, a teenager who's bought into what she's been taught, takes it seriously, looks around the world, and what she sees is massive hypocrisy. What she sees is massive betrayal. Betrayal of her generation, betrayal of the ideas that she's being taught, betrayal of the so-called science that she is being taught is true. And she takes it seriously. She's fighting for a cause. She's uncompromising. I mean, I remember being 16. She's, I think, 16 now. And reading Atlas Shrugged. And realizing the betrayal of the adults. Realizing how I've been betrayed by all my teachers. How I've been betrayed by every politician out there. That, you know, all I wanted to do was stand up and yell. And I was angry. I was furious. I was really pissed off. I argued with everybody. Everybody had betrayed me and betrayed young people because the world was full of lies. I still feel that way. One of the reasons I get so passionate and so angry is I still feel that way. You, we're all being betrayed. We're living in a world filled with lies. Some of these lies have resulted in Greta. A world filled with lies. I'm furious. I'm angry. Now, I can control it a little bit because I'm a little older than 16. And I've seen the source of these lies. I know the source of these lies. I know how difficult it's going to be to reverse those lies. So I've mellowed a little bit, if you can believe that, because of that. But I understand Greta. She's angry. If what we're being told by scientists, if what we're being told by the environmentalists is true, then she should be angry. Now, again, the solutions are all wrong, but nobody seems to be doing anything about the end of the world as we know it, supposedly. Right? So I understand the anger, I understand the frustration of a 16-year-old who thinks they know the truth and who sees the world for the hypocrisy and the short-sightedness and the irrationality that really, truly exists out there. And then you see the kind of critics she has. The critics don't deal with the issues. You know, and you can see it on the chat here. The critics deal with how she looks. You know, she's got Asperger's. And when you have Asperger's, you know, the way you communicate changes. To make fun of her is ridiculous. Or I think Dinesh D'Souza, who's a creep. Dinesh D'Souza, you know, there's my ad hominem against him. Dinesh D'Souza, says something about, well, the Nazis used young girls with ponytails, Scandinavian girls, blonde girls with ponytails for their propaganda. I don't think she's being used for propaganda. I think she's passionate, sincere, wrong, looks retarded, people are saying. She's got Asperger's. Leave her alone. And what does that have to do with anything? Not only does that not contradict her ideas, but secondly, you're denying the fact by insulting her that she has now more influence than any of you. She has more influence than I do. She has an audience of millions and millions of people. She gets invited to the places of power and talks. We'll see how she talks to them in a minute. And who cares what she looks like? The question is, why does she have so much power? Why are people following her? Why are people listening to her? And what is the truth or falsehood of what she's saying? People say, oh, she's just being manipulated by her parents. Well, I wonder. She's a teenager. I wonder if she's being manipulated by her parents or she's manipulating her parents. I wonder which direction it goes. From what I've read, and granted, I'm no Greta expert, yeah, her parents were environmentalists, but everybody's an environmentalist. Everybody certainly on the left is environmentalist, which is like 50%, and in Europe, 80%. She's the one who's convinced her mother to basically give up on her international opera career and stop flying because of carbon. She's the one who's turned them all into vegans. She's a teenager. She's rebelling by accepting what she perceives as the common truth out there, but seeing the hypocrisy in adults. And adults are hypocrites. She truly is a Joan of Arc of our time. Joan of Arc came around and said, you're all hypocrites. You'll claim to be Christians. You'll claim to believe in this God. You'll claim to follow these ideas, but you're not. You're living sinful, horrible lives. I've read the articles about the people. So let me finish this point, and then I'll get to the super chat. You're living sinful, horrible lives. You're all hypocrites. I'm here, representative of God, to tell you you're all sinners and to call you back to true Christianity. Well, if environmentalism is the religion, and climate change is the manifestation of that religion, and sin is carbon emissions, then she's calling out the hypocrisy of all those lefties and some people on the right who think that climate change, global warming is awful, that should be doing something about it, and that are not, that live life as normal. Right? I mean, she is, in that sense, a Christian. She's calling them out. You know, you claim to be altruist, but all you care about money. You claim to be altruist, but all you care about is about your living standard. You claim to be altruist, but all you care about is economic growth. I'm calling you on your moral stand. I'm calling you to be consistent with your beliefs. So OMG says, there's an article in the London Times about the money and people behind Greta. Sure, she came out and she went on strike, and people with money in the environmentalist movement realized that she could have, she could rile people up, that she had power, she had influence, and they backed her. But she's not doing it for the money. She's not about the money. Roland asked, Dr. Peikoff has characterized environmentalism as D2. D2 means disintegration, a disintegrated philosophy. But could M2 authoritarians embrace it eventually? It certainly seems to have many elements of a religion. Yes, I mean, I've claimed, and there's a talk I gave, which unfortunately I only gave once, and it was videotaped, but the videotape has disappeared, so I don't have any record of this talk, although I did write it out. It's one of my talks in the old days where I wrote it out, where I basically said that the ultimate is when the religious right adopts the environmentalist message, which I think there's already evidence of, and they embrace it under kind of a D2, an M2 integrated view of God. God is here to help us protect the environment. But yes, I think that this is, environmentalism is a form of religion, and in that sense could be integrated around a false premise. So here she is, a girl who sees the hypocrisy and the lies around her. And let's watch some video of her, because I think I believe it's all about, at the end of the day, it's about morality. It's not about, it's not about, what moves people is moral fervor. What moves people is moral righteousness. Particularly, and this is, I did some videos on OAC, on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I said what makes her influential, makes her powerful, is her moral fervor. And the fact that a lot of what she says is wrong, the fact that a lot of what she says doesn't make any sense economically, doesn't matter. Nobody knows that. They don't understand that. Nobody accepts that. But what really gets people behind her is her commitment, her painting this in black and white, her painting this as a moral imperative. And you can make fun of Greta all you want. You can make fun of how she looks. You can make fun of her parents. You can claim she's in it for the money. You can do all of that. But what she brings to the fight, what the environmentalists have had but have really lacked full on, is this moral fervor. And that's what she brings. And she's good at it. Because I think she believes it. I think she's sincere. And that is what moves people. What moves people is moral fervor. Now, she's capitalizing on the fact that nobody's challenging her science. Nobody's challenging her premises. Nobody's challenging her ideas about the solution. So she's capitalizing on a culture that's already being softened by 3 decades at least of environmentalists who've been pounding at us about climate change and climate change and climate change, and the world is going to end and we have to stop using fossil fuel, and that is the only solution possible. So let's watch Greta. All right, there she is. This is the UN's Action Summit, Climate Action Summit 2019. 2019. So notice, these are people who are environmentalists. These are people talking about, they've accepted climate change. These are people who want to stop using carbon fuels. These are people who have a lot of them are politicians, some of them might be business people. These are people with real power. These are the elites. And this is what makes her popular. It's from the perspective of environmentalists, she's telling truth to power. Now, I don't think what she's saying is true, but from their perspective, what gives her the credibility, what gives her the fervor that people follow her is this. Watch this. Oh, I better put my headphones on so I know what she's saying.
My message is that we'll be watching.
My message is, we'll be watching you. She's talking to the people who supposedly are advocating for climate change, but they're not good enough. We're going to be watching you. She's not inspired by the applause.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
I mean, that's powerful. You all come to us young people for hope? You adults? You people with power? You people with influence? You people who can actually change the world? And you come to me for hope? How dare you? You betrayed my generation. I think you missed the point if what you see from her is her Asperger's, or what you see in her is she's angry. And she's right to be angry if you buy the story of climate change. It's a genuine anger if you've been every year of your life being fed the propaganda of climate change. You should be angry. You should be furious. Particularly if you don't, nobody has told you. Nobody has presented you with the facts involved. I mean, primarily the fact of what would happen if you actually followed their advice. So I think you missed the point if you just see, I don't know, a mentally ill person or something like that. She's not. She's the one who's taking this stuff seriously. And she's angry. And she's projecting anger. And that's powerful.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones.
Now I have to say, I felt that when I was 16. Not because of climate change, but because of the altruism that I saw around me. And I still feel that way. You've stolen my world.
People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Notice the moral fervor. The moral fervor that she has. Mass extinction. And it's scary. It's really scary. The world is going to end. She grew up on that ideology. And everybody around us has grown up on that ideology. The world is going to end. Mass extinction is upon us. You can see documentary after documentary out there about the horrific nature of what's going on around us. How dare you not do anything about this? How dare you not work to solve this problem? How dare you leave a world so damaged to your children? That's what Greta is saying. And again, from the perspective of a climate change, somebody who acknowledges it, it's true. And she's not starting from the premise of socialism. I don't think she lands up as a socialist because, she hates money. That's, of course, but everybody does. Right and left. Look at our political spectrum. Look at the whole spectrum of our politics today. Evil corporations. Making money, the evil of making money. She's capitalizing on all that, on all the altruism, on all the hysteria, on all the ignorance, on all of that. And she's voicing it with moral fervor, with moral certainty. She's indoctrinated, sure. But so is her entire generation. And instead of challenging the indoctrination, instead of challenging the facts, and instead of challenging the morality behind it, the morality of sacrifice, the morality of death, the morality of altruism, we just ridicule her. We make fun of her. We worry about the money behind her. Yeah, well, sure. There's going to be money behind anybody popular, anybody successful, anybody that gets an audience. They cheer her, right? She doesn't want to cheer, she wants their action.
For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear.
Has it?
How dare you continue to look away?
Notice, she's not talking to skeptics. She's not talking to people who challenge the science. She's talking to people who agree with her.
I'm here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight.
She's right. If you believe in the rhetoric, if you believe in the story.
You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe.
Wow. I mean, she's good. I don't know who's writing her speeches, if she is. I think she is. But that's good stuff. I don't want to believe you're evil. She's insufferable to you, but she's got millions of followers. Why? Because of this moral fervor. Because she's willing to take a room full of people who agree with her on the science, that they're incompetent fools, that they're not brave enough to do what's necessary, that she doesn't want to believe that they're evil, but because their actions imply that. It's the ideas that need to be challenged. The ideas, the scientific ideas, the idea of sacrifice, but also the fundamental idea of what is the solution, even if the science were true. The idea that economic growth is something you can do away with. The idea that human life is not the standard, which she does not acknowledge. That if you accept human life as the standard, then getting rid of fossil fuels can't be the solution. And suddenly, traveling on sailboats, as she did to the United States recently instead of flying, is not the solution. That human life is the standard, then flying is the solution. Maybe nuclear energy is the solution. There are many solutions. If the problem exists and if the standard is human life. But she's got the wrong standard. She doesn't care about human life. She doesn't care about people in Africa and in Asia who are far, 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 far poorer than her, and that her ideas would basically kill. She doesn't care about civilization, which would basically end if her ideas. That's not the standard for her. But that's the level in which she needs to be criticized. Her moral fervor is justified in the context of what she and what the rest of the world know and believe. And again, calling her names is just damn stupid, and it makes you look retarded. Because the fact is that she has the influence. Millions of people are being inspired by her, like it or not.
The popular idea of cutting our emissions in half in 10 years only gives us a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees and the risk of setting off irreversible chain reactions beyond human control. 50% may be acceptable to you, but those numbers do not include tipping points, most feedback loops, additional warming hidden by toxic air pollution, or the aspects of equity and climate justice. They also rely...
I mean, she doesn't know what climate justice means. There is no such thing as climate justice. And if you cared about justice, you would never advocate for these ideas. You would never advocate for the solutions, put aside the science. You would never advocate for these solutions. Because these solutions are anything but just. Would inflict massive injustice on millions and millions, actually billions of people. But notice she has all the lingo down. She probably reads every scientific paper that comes out of this. If you've, people with Asperger's, which she has, often get very, very focused and become specialized in a certain field. They know everything about that field. My sense is she can probably cite a lot of these papers by heart. She's taken all this seriously, and now she's adding her moral fervor to it.
On my generation, sucking hundreds of billions of tons of your CO2 out of the air with technologies that barely exist. So a 50% risk is simply not acceptable to us, we who have to live with the consequences.
Now imagine a young person came out like this and started railing about Social Security and Medicare and how they are being expected to sacrifice for the sake of the older generations, and how their great grandparents and grandparents are sucking the life out of them by taxing them to death, by creating a world that is economically going to make them poorer. Imagine if some young people stood up and made those kind of claims. Now today they would not be heard, because everybody would say, what are you talking about? We have no context to understand your claims. But that's how I felt when I was 16. You've created this statist world. You've created this altruistic world. You're denying me the freedom. You're denying me the wealth. You're denying me the opportunities. You're denying me the ability to live as I know, as Ayn Rand has projected. Every human being is capable of living, and you make it impossible for me to do that. Now flip it, and you can see why she's so powerful, and why, if we don't do anything about this, if we don't start challenging these assumptions, she's going to win. She's going to win. Because if all you can say about her is she looked retarded, she's won already.
To have a 67% chance of staying below a 1.5 degrees of global temperature rise, the best odds given by the IPCC, the world had 420 gigatons of CO2 left to emit back on January 1st, 2018. Today that figure is already down to less than 350 gigatons. How dare you pretend that this can be solved with just business as usual and some technical solutions? With today's emissions levels, that remaining CO2 budget will be entirely gone within less than 8.5 years.
She's calling them out. The people who can change things, and they're not doing it.
There will not be any solutions or plans presented in line with these figures here today, because these numbers are too uncomfortable, and you are still not mature enough to tell it like it is. You are failing us, but the young people are starting to understand your betrayal. The eyes of all future generations are upon you. And if you choose to fail us, I say we will never forgive you.
Whoops, what did I do?
My message is...
All right, so that's video number one. I want to show you another quick clip of her. What is it? Just like a minute and a half. Again, notice how she positions all this. This is black and white, no compromise, moral certainty, absolutism, uncompromising. This is what religion gives, but this is what moral certainty gives, moral certainty. And the particular religion here is environmentalism and the climate change hysteria and panic and you know, this conviction that the world is going to end, a kind of another millennial cult. But she brings to it moral fiber. And so watch this. Let's see. This is, by the way, at Davos. Davos, again. She's talking to people who have the power to make changes. Now, God help us if they do. But these are the people, she's talking from her perspective, from the perspective of the environmentalist movement, she's talking truth to power.
You say nothing in life is black or white, but that is a lie, a very dangerous lie.
It is a lie.
Either we prevent a 1.5 degree of warming or we don't. Either we avoid setting off that irreversible chain reaction beyond human control or we don't. Either we choose to go on as a civilization or we don't. That is as black or white as it gets.
That's powerful stuff. Black or white. moral or immoral, good or evil. If you believe this is good, if you believe this is right, if you believe the science, you got to do something. That's powerful messaging. Those of us who believe in free markets, those of us who believe in capitalism, could learn something from this girl in terms of how we communicate. Now, for us, it's harder because we have to establish the facts. She can take them as for granted. Everybody in her audience agrees with the facts. What she's saying is do something about it.
We must change almost everything in our current societies.
Now she says this is going to require major changes. What I believe is going to require major changes. I'm not a conservative. I'm not a moderate libertarian. To get the kind of world I believe in, we're going to have to change the world in dramatic, big, unequivocal ways. So I get where she's coming from. I get the anger and frustration of being betrayed by the world around you, having your ideals be betrayed by the world around you.
The bigger your carbon footprint is, the bigger your moral duty.
Your moral
the bigger
duty.
your platform, the bigger your responsibility. Adults keep saying we owe it to the young people to give them hope. But I don't want your hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. And then I want you to act. I want you to act as if you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if the house was on fire. Because it is.
That is powerful stuff. And unless you understand your enemy, you cannot win. And unless one of the big reasons why free market thinkers have not won is because they lack that moral fiber. They lack that moral certainty. We have to believe in the cause and be willing to believe, understand why it's evil. We have to fight for the future as if the future matters, as if we care. This is not an intellectual game. This is not me getting it and you not. This is not just playing around. This is about life. And it's about life or death. Greta gets it. It's about civilization or no civilization. Greta gets that. She's on the wrong side of this, but she knows what the stakes are. Do you? The people on our side know what the stakes are? Realize what's at stake? And are willing to fight? I'm not so sure. All right. The biggest argument to be made against the ideas behind Greta, and I'm going to put the science aside, let me say this. So I speak at a lot of high schools, and I see a lot of kids who, like Greta, are afraid. And, there's nothing sadder than that. There's nothing sadder than a 15-year-old or 16-year-old telling you that they live in fear for the future. It's horrible. And I believe her when she says she does. Because I see it. I see it when I travel in high schools, talking to kids, and the issue of climate change comes up. And they are truly petrified. They have no appreciation for how amazing life is on planet Earth right now. They have no appreciation for how amazing the environment is right now. How clean our water is. How clean our air is relative to any other period in human history. How long our lives are. How many opportunities we have because we live in such a wealthy place. Very few people who live in the West have traveled and seen what life is like in Africa or Cambodia, certain parts of Asia. How poor people can be. How horrible life can be. Most people have no clue. Most people just accept the world in which we live, the wealth with which we live, as just a state of nature. And now they just want to tinker with it. They just want to change things around. But the wealth won't go away because they don't get that wealth is created. And wealth can only be created under certain environments. Political, economic, social, philosophical environments. They think that if they do away with the political, social, economic, philosophical environment, if they shift it, the wealth will still be here. They have no idea. Climate change might cause flooding. It might change the lives of millions of people. It might cause people to have to move. But climate change will not kill tens of millions of people, particularly not in rich Western countries. But Greta's solution, the environmentalist solution, will kill hundreds of millions of people. Everywhere. In the West, it will destroy and eliminate civilization. But poor people around the world will also die because the technology they rely on to survive will be ending. The ideas behind Greta's solution to climate change are massive killers. Massive killers. Now, the real solutions, if there is a problem, are things like nuclear energy. At some point, I want to talk about, maybe not today, but this series on Bill Gates, which I thought was fascinating. Inside Bill Gates' Mind, I think it's called. And they talk there about about nuclear, which I thought was interesting. But, you know, it's things like that that are solutions. All right, so, again, we have to understand where Greta's coming from. We have to understand them all five. And we need answers. We have the answers. But our advocates, the people who fight against the climate hysteria, have to have the right answers. Again, I encourage you to read Alex Epstein's book, The Moral Case for Fossil Fuel, or follow him on social media and read his stuff, because I think he provides a lot of the ways in which we can fight against this climate hysteria. But, you know, most of the people that I read, when I looked up Greta, what is their claims? I mean, it's so these are the critics of Greta. It's child abuse. Greta Thunberg is being cruelly manipulated by her parents. I doubt it. I think she's the one doing the manipulating. Why is it okay to make fun of a teenage snickering at a Native American man at a pro-life rally and not Greta? Well, it's fine if you want to make fun of her, but she's going to win. Greta Thunberg is mentally ill. Really? Come on, get a life. How would you feel if this person supported an entirely different cause? Well, it's irrelevant. The cause is the issue, not the issue of the person. Is the cause just or is the cause not? That's what you have to fight over. Once you accept the cause, Greta's doing a magnificent job if you accept her cause. But is her cause right? No. Is her cause just? No. Is her cause moral? No. On the contrary, she represents black if the world is in black and white. Not because of her personality, not because of Asperger's, not because of the way she talks, but because of her ideas. Greta Thunberg is a communist. I think in the end, she lands up being one, not a communist, but she wants to upend the world, and I'm sure, given her altruism, that she wants a society in which we share more, in which we, return to nature more and everything, which means hundreds of millions of deaths, and it also means some form of authoritarianism to implement all this, right? That's the implication. But just calling her a communist is not going to work. All right. Let's take some of these super chat questions. I know some of you think she's not going to win. I think she's already winning. I think the fact is that we live in a world in which climate change is not in dispute. We live in a world where the majority of people today believe that climate change, that the hysterical type of climate change is happening, that this is the issue of our time, if you will. And we live in a world in which now almost all the politicians have bought into this in one way or another. And those who oppose it are just, even they are compromising about it, because the Gretas of the world have them all high ground, have captured them all high ground, have taken them all high ground. I mean, again, the way Greta functions is interesting. So she criticized Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, who's a lefty. And she had a meeting with Trudeau. And after the meeting, she said, he's not serious. He doesn't do enough. So she's attacking the left. She's pushing the left further to the left. She's principled. Principle always wins. In the middle of the road, the compromisers, ultimately, long-term, they are the losers. All right, let's take some of the super chat questions. All right, I'm trying to look for ones on the topic. So this is a quote attributed to Lou Rockwell. It's as if the socialists discovered that their plan created poverty and so decided to change their names to environmentalists and make poverty their goal. I mean, I've heard this in many, many ways. Environmentalists are like watermelons, green on the outside, red on the inside. I mean, this whole thing has been on and on. That's old stuff. Now, the environmentalists, they're all socialists, or most of them are socialists. But they have captured the moral high ground just like socialists did decades ago. And they want to implement their ideas just like socialists did decades ago. And the socialists did in the end implement the ideas at the costs of, well over 100 million people, their lives. And the environmentalists look like they're going to win too and implement their ideas at the cost of maybe more hundreds of millions of lives. Right? But we're going to have to try it because I don't see the opposition. I don't see enough of us rallying against. I don't see enough of a principled opposition, and an opposition that is based on science and based on a proper moral code. A moral code that is centered on human life. So, we've got to challenge the science. We've got to challenge this idea that they throw out there constantly about consensus, if science is driven by consensus. I mean, that's a load of nonsense. But we've got to challenge the science itself. And I know some people are doing that. But it can't just be that. It has to be with real moral fervor. And again, I recommend Moral Case for Fossil Fuel. Okay. And of course, I highly recommend the most important book on this issue is Ayn Rand's Return of the Primitive. Ayn Rand's essays on what she called the ecological movement in the late 1960s, early 1970s, well before the whole issue of climate change, global warming was an issue. She nailed it back then. She nailed it 50 years ago. What are your ideas to start a youth movement like her Fridays for Future? What requirements and steps do we need to start Fridays for Reason Objectivism? Well, you need to have articulated what you stand for in a way that inspires young people. You need to find a way. You need a young person to lead the movement. You need them to be able to articulate what they're fighting for in an inspiring way. It has to be focused not on reason and objectivism, but on individualism, on morality, on some moral idea, on life, on black and white. Reason is the foundation, just like she uses science as the foundation. Reason, or so-called science, we need to use reason as the foundation. But that's not your pitch. Your pitch has to be moral in its nature. And then you have to go and you have to talk. And you have to have some marketing stunts. But marketing stunts that get exposure to your ideas. You have to have the right message. And you have to have the means to get that message out there into the world. Not easy. Not easy. Let's see. Why do you think the public gives the benefit of the doubt to apocalyptic predictions of the environmentalists, despite their repeated inaccurate predictions of the past? Because what the environmentalists are plugging into is altruism. It's Christianity. It's the idea of original sin. It's the idea that we're all sinners, the idea that we're all doing bad things. What environmentalists plug into is religion, particularly Christianity. I mean, it's a very, very Christian movement. And I know I've been getting a hard time for going after Christianity so much. But it's a very Christian movement. It basically sets it up that in order to achieve salvation, we need to sacrifice. We need to sacrifice our material well-being in order to attain salvation. Salvation is the appeasement of Mother Earth. Salvation is zero carbon footprint. Salvation is being one with nature. In order to achieve that, we must sacrifice. And because we are not good enough, because we are not virtuous enough, then God is going to rain terror on us. We are going to suffer a horrible fate. Because we're all sinners. All you have to do is look around and see the material wealth. All you have to do is look around and see the carbon emissions. We're all real sinners. Or in a Christian version, all you have to do is look around and see all the egoism, all the selfishness, all the self-interest, all the materialism, all the wealth creation. And you know that you're not dedicating yourself enough to God. You're not sacrificing enough for your neighbor. You don't love your brother enough. And God is going to bring about the end of the world. Now take God out of it. You're not sacrificing enough. I can see all the carbon emissions going off. I can see all the wealth creation. I can see all the joy, all the happiness, all the fun you are having emitting carbon. There's going to be a reckoning. There has to be a reckoning. There has to be an end to this. It just feeds off of that. Every millennial cult feeds off of that, whether it's a Christian millennial cult, whether it's some other kind of millennial cult. We are not good enough for this world. We're not good enough for the gods. We're not good enough for Mother Nature. We're not good enough for the environment. We, as human beings, are inherently sinners. And therefore the world must end. And if it's not going to end by global cooling, then it'll end by global warming. And if it's not going to end by global warming, it'll end by climate change. And if it doesn't end by climate change, it'll end by overpopulation. If it doesn't end by overpopulation, it'll end by some other thing they'll invent. But just around the corner, the world's going to end. And unless you undo the original sin, unless you question the idea that man is so depraved, unless you question the idea of the morality of sacrifice, unless you question the notion that we must suffer in this life, because that's the nature of morality, then you cannot convince people the world will not end. Because they look around and they see immorality everywhere, and there has to be You have to pay for immorality. You have to pay for immorality. What we have to convince the world is that self-interest, wealth creation, capitalism, freedom are not immoral. They're the opposite. They're the essence of morality. That life is good. Life's to be enjoyed. Happiness is the goal. Be happy. Stop worrying about things you have no control over. About things that you should not be worrying about. Focus on making your life the best that you can have. Live the best life you can for yourself. That world, where people start believing that, is when the apocalyptic scenarios disappear. It's not about facts anymore. That capitalism is about facts. It's not like people are anti-capitalist because they don't get economics. If only we taught them one more economic principle, then they would get capitalism. No. They hate capitalism because capitalism is fundamentally a system of self-interest, and they reject self-interest. They hate Western civilization. They hate the wealth creation because fundamentally it's about egoism, and they hate egoism. That's why the environmentalists and the socialists are the same. But so the religionists, all of them, they hate the world around us because of its inherent self-interest. It's what it encourages it, it rewards it, it promotes it. All right, let's see. Do you think it's proper for a child to try to shame adults the way Greta did? Isn't there something wrong in a society that promotes that? No. Other way around. I think it's the beauty of teenagers. That they're idealistic. They're uncorrupted. Or they have the potential to be. They look at the world with fresh eyes. I shamed all the adults around me. Now, they didn't buy it. They thought I was just nuts. But I tried to shame them when I was 16. And I was right. Not in the way I did it, but in the content of what I did, what I said. She's a child, she's a teenage child. If she was 5, it would be ridiculous. But she's 15, 16. She's at this time of conceptual awakening. She's starting to think. Her eyes are opening. She's got a fresh perspective. She wants consistency. What she's demanding, this is what I respect about her, what she's demanding is idealism. What she has is idealism. That's a beautiful thing in a teenager. That's a beautiful thing in a teenager. Let's see. It doesn't appear that the moral case for fossil fuel is widely accepted among my millennial peers. No, it's not. Because everything they've been taught, everything that adults around them have told them since they were little is the exact opposite. And unless they're willing to think for themselves, or unless they're willing to be independent, which is something very few, unfortunately, people are willing to do, they're going to buy into it. Now notice, I don't know much about Greta, but my guess is she's not an independent thinker. She's not going to be open to alternative ideas. She's not committed. And in that sense, she will have an awful, horrible life. Because she's not going to be able to challenge these. When the world doesn't end in 12 years, she'll have to refocus her efforts on some other catastrophe. She'll feel betrayed by the people who told her the world's going to end in 12 years. She might lose respect for science and become a religionist. Who knows? But unless she starts thinking for herself, she is doomed. So don't worry about insulting her. She's going to have a miserable life. We can guarantee that. It's just sad. It's just sad. You gave a speech on rational optimism last year, but you seem more pessimistic recently. Did something change? That's a great question. And the answer is yes, it did change. Something has changed. And it actually changed before I gave the speech, but it wasn't fully integrated, plus I'd already committed to giving the speech. I brought up the most optimistic I could be in order to give that speech. And I still believe in much of what I said in that speech. But things have changed, and I know I'm going to be hated for what I say. But what's changed is well, fundamentally what's changed is that I've discovered, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I've discovered that people are far less capable of independent thought than I thought they were. And the thing that has made that real to me, there are two things that have made that real to me. One is, and I know you guys are going to freak out, one is Donald Trump. Now, not him, but the response to him. I mean, I have to say that the last couple of years dealing with Trump have been the most depressing, intellectually as an activist, the most depressing periods ever. I mean, I had, you know, it was very difficult to deal with George Bush when I used to talk about foreign policy. It was then very difficult, not George Bush, but the people who followed him blindly, and then the people who followed Barack Obama blindly. But the blindness with which people follow Donald Trump, I have never seen anything like it. I mean, it's like the people who followed Obama, but I didn't realize it was on both sides of the aisle, and I didn't realize it was so prevalent and so extensive and so nutty. I mean, people who in the past would be biggest real promoters of the idea of zero tariffs now are big believers in tariffs. The trade is not good. That has really depressed me. That has had people who used to think that sucking up to evil dictators was a bad thing now think that it's the only way to deal with them. Whether it's murderous dictator of North Korea, or whether it's Erdogan in Turkey, or whether it's what's his name, the Iranian regime. We'll see. You're going to see major sucking up to the Iranians soon. You know, so again, it's not what he's done, because as Luca points out, yeah, Trump has done some good things. He's taken us out of the Paris Accord, for example, with regard to climate change. That's a good thing, although I don't think it's very lasting, and I don't think it'll last very long. And I think if the political winds change, or if he wakes up on the other side of the bed, then I think that he would take us back in, even in a more, you know, with more rigor into the thing. But it's the blindness of the people who follow him. Just a complete blindness. The complete acceptance has lowered my expectation of people. It's like I used to think that, okay, people will get it, people can get it, people will get it, and it's a growing movement, and it'll constantly grow. And yeah, I won't see change in my lifetime, but I know it's a growing movement. Now I don't know, because a lot of people who I thought were in this movement have now turned out to be complete blind followers. Irrational, emotion-driven. Some of them become nationalists. Some of them become conservatives. Some of them become out-and-out, alt-right racists. And that's shocking to me. I mean, I've never been more disappointed in my fellow man and my fellow people who I thought were on the same page as me as I have been over the last year or so. Year, 2 years. Right? So that's one. The second is, I think I see. So I was very optimistic and very positive of Silicon Valley, but of course the flaw with that is that Silicon Valley cannot ultimately avoid the bad philosophy, and I think that the bad philosophy is really catching up with them. And again, put aside, I'm not talking about the politics. I'm talking about the smaller thinking, the less ambitious. I talked about this when I talked about WeWork, and so on. John Doe says Joanna goes both ways. I'm disappointed in you. I know. I mean, I get that all the time, and I'm not. I hope you're disappointed in me. It gives me great pleasure that some of you are shocked and disappointed by me, because I don't want to be. I don't want to inspire you, because you're mindless. Not all of you, but I mean, there are enough of you, those who are disappointed in me, mindless creeps out there that I don't want to have anything to do with you. I mean, the idea that anybody could still hold that Donald Trump is a positive influence in the world, that idea is so despicable and so mindless to me. I don't want to inspire. I don't want to inspire those people. So, I don't know why you're listening to the show if I've disappointed you so. So I think that's why I am less optimistic than I was. I think it's what I'm seeing is real changes in Silicon Valley that are impacting not just the virtue signaling and the kind of moral stance that they take and the way they treat their employees, but now it's impacting the kind of businesses they support, the kind of businesses they run, and the expectation for innovation. Because as I said in the talk about optimism, one of the things that makes me optimistic is one, technology, and two, business. But I see business caving. I don't know if you saw the business roundtable. I need to do a show on this. Caving on the purpose of a corporation. The purpose of a corporation now is stakeholders. I mean, that's the end of America if that is taken seriously. So it's very, very difficult in this environment. I give you some others. Tucker Carlson agreeing with Elizabeth Warren. As I never liked Tucker Carlson, but I never thought the right would merge with the left in my lifetime like that. The rise of conservative nationalism, right? The rise of racism, the rise of anti-Semitism in America. I never thought I'd see racism. I never thought I'd see people who follow me. And please, I wish you'd go away, because you truly do disgust me, who are white nationalists or white whatever. To me, those kind of things are so despicable and ugly, right? And look, there's certain things like the trade issue. I've done show after show after show after show about it. I don't do it anymore. I don't give the full explanation. I understand why people don't get it if they're first exposed to it, but if you listen to the show, and if you listen to all my past shows, and I've discussed it over and over again and given the economics and talked about why it doesn't make sense morally and why it doesn't make sense economically, and you still buy into it, that either I'm a horrible, horrible teacher or you don't think for yourself. All right. Let's see if there's anything else related. Okay, so there are two questions made by the same person. Asked, lack of romantic drama contributed to her behavior. Do you think the lack of romantic art and romantic sense of life is a factor in the historic public behavior of the child climate activist? Now, I wouldn't call her a child climate activist. I call her a teenage public activist. There's a different sense in which you call a girl like this a child or a teenager. In the sense of an adult having sex with her, she's a child. In a sense of her being an idealist, she's a teenager. She's got a mind. She's not legally a independent person, but she's got a mind with opinions, with views. And particularly given that opinions and views are not outside of the mainstream. They're in the mainstream. What she's calling the mainstream out is on their hypocrisy, on their lack of moral commitment. That's not the behavior of a child. That's the behavior of an idealistic teenager. Good for her. Now, do I think lack of romantic art and romantic sense of life? Absolutely. But why is there a lack of romantic art and lack of romantic sense of life? Because we've abandoned individualism, because we've abandoned reason. It's the lack of understanding of what human beings are, what their nature is, and what they are capable of. It's the undercutting of our minds and therefore an undercutting of our ability as individuals to live and flourish, which philosophy did 200 years ago, which destroyed romantic art and ultimately the romantic sense of life. So instead of looking at the world out there and saying, let's assume that science is true, and saying, there's a problem, the earth is warming, but we as human beings have the capacity to reason, have the capacity to solve problems like this. Life is good. Life is amazing. We are so wealthy that we should be able to solve these things. Let's approach this from the perspective of how wonderful life is. Let's approach this from the perspective that there are solutions to the problems. Let's approach this not from the perspective that, oh, we have sinned for 200 years and are paying for our sins now. But let's approach this from the perspective that, wow, we have done amazing things over the last 200 years. We've created industrial revolution. We have raised the standard of living, the life expectancy, the quality of life of human beings dramatically over the last 200 years. It's an amazing world, and we face a challenge. Let's solve it. That's what a romantic sense of life would do. And that's what romantic art would project, because romantic art over the last 100 years should have been an ode to businessmen, should have been an ode to wealth creation, should have been an ode to capitalism. And if that had been the case, then you wouldn't have had Gretas in the world. We would have had a problem, let's say, if it's a true problem, climate change. And we would have approached it as we approach rational problems with attempts to solve them. Rationally, voluntarily, as problem solvers. One of the things I like about the Bill Gates documentary, the third episode is about climate change. And while, again, I think he buys into too much of the conventional view on climate change, he buys into conventional views of a lot of things. I'll talk about it when I talk about the show. His approach to the problem is, okay, well, how do we solve it? It's not, oh my God, the world's going to end, let's stop using carbon fuels. It's how do we solve it? How do we reduce CO2 emissions? Well, the obvious answer to that is use nuclear power. Okay, but nuclear power has these problems. How do we solve these problems? Oh, here's a new technology around nuclear power. Let's invest in that nuclear technology. Let's put millions in. Let's try to build a demo plant. Of course, that building a demo plant was killed by Trump because the demo plant was going to be in China, because you could never build a demo plant in the United States. Why? Because we're more regulated than China is. And that was killed by Trump not allowing technology transfers to China. So through the whole trade thing. So that's the right approach. Bill Gates, unfortunately, buys into wrong premises, but at least he has the right approach in dealing with them. That's a romantic approach to life. That's an approach that says people have free will, people can solve problems, reason is the solution, science is the solution. Let's approach it from that perspective. It's not the perspective of environmentalism. It's not the perspective of 90% of the population. And it's not a perspective that's projected in our art. I mean, indeed, most of the art that young kids get today is art about the destructive nature of human beings, how we destroy the environment, how we destroy the planet, how awful we are, how sinful we are. It again reminds me of kind of Christian literature, which describes the fall of man and how evil human beings are and how bad they are. Right? It's very Christian in that sense. Christian in that, focus on sinful nature of mankind. They published, it worked for Christianity, they're publishing the same kind of art. So yes, you would need romantic art in order to combat all this, but in order to get romantic art, you need a philosophical revolution, which is what I keep saying we need. Okay, let's see. Okay, no more Super Chat questions because I've got a lot to catch up with. We've already gone an hour, 15 minutes. So this is a question. After an impressively thorough work, how did Pinker completely miss the mark in his one comment about Ayn Rand in Enlightenment Now? Well, because I don't think he takes her philosophically seriously, and I don't think many people do. By the way, I think Pinker is not a philosopher, doesn't understand many of the philosophers out there. Many of the philosophers out there. So if you read his previous works, like The Blank Slate, he gets philosophy wrong all the time, and he gets Ayn Rand wrong. But partially it's because he won't think fresh about Ayn Rand, which is sad. Which is sad. Again, if people like Pinker took Ayn Rand seriously, we would be light years ahead of where we are. Because he has got such a reputation, but beyond that, he's a good communicator. And that's what we need. We need good communicators who do deep, serious work on topic and are willing to popularize it. What are the economics behind a carbon tax? Well, a carbon tax would just, you tax things you want less of. And actually, Stuart reminds me that Pinker's wife is a philosopher. And Pinker's wife has, objections to Ayn Rand. But again, and read Greg Salamieri on this. In Ayn Rand's Companion, he's got an introductory essay to Ayn Rand's, the companion to Ayn Rand, in where he writes that some of it is translation error. That modern philosophers think in completely different terms and view the world so differently than Ayn Rand. So they can't even understand a core philosopher. But that's what they need. So they need to read the Companion. So read Greg. Greg is very good at explaining those kind of things. Okay, carbon tax is when you tax something, you get less of it. The idea behind a carbon tax is you set a tax, and therefore you'll get less of it. People will have an economic incentive to figure out alternative ways to engage in the activity they want to engage in and emit less carbon, because if they emit the same or more carbon, they will pay for it. They will pay for it. So that's the basic economic behind a carbon tax, and the idea is that'll spur innovation because there'll be an economic incentive to spur innovation. So it's the so-called capitalist solution because it supposedly creates a market incentive to find solutions to create energy without consuming, without emitting carbon. But that, of course, assumes that CO2 is a real problem. That assumes that, and that it's a global problem, it's an imminent problem, it's a life or death problem. We have to use force in order to solve the problem, none of which is true. Well, I don't know if none of it is true, but that's certainly the last element, the idea that you need to use force, i.e. a tax, in order to solve it, that is untrue. All right, hey, Yaron, after the great gender insanity on CNN, when do you think we'll see again a sane Democratic Party? The only one I could vote for over Trump is Biden. I don't know. I think again, one of the things I think Trump has done is he's moved the Democratic Party further to the left. So now you have two insane parties, a Trump Republican Party, which I cannot vote for, and Elizabeth Warren, I don't know, LGBTQ insanity party on the left. So you have two political parties who I think, there really does need to be a third political party in this country, kind of a sane, here's an idea, a sane pro-trade, generally pro-markets, generally pro-individual rights, but not in the deep understanding of individual rights, because that would be too much to expect, generally pro, on the LGBTQ issue, the only political issue there is they're individuals, and therefore their rights as individuals should be protected. So what you need is a Goldwater kind of, but let's even say less free market than Goldwater, because again, I think Goldwater is too good to expect. Less free market than Goldwater, somewhere truly in the political center of the United States. That would be a massive improvement on both political parties, and I think it's still where the majority of Americans are. I don't think the majority of Americans agree with Trump, and I don't think a majority of Americans agree with the nutty, with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I think the majority of Americans are somewhere in the middle. I don't know what the figures of that middle look like, but it's certainly where neither political party is. Nuclear fusion is a hope. Excellent technical overview on YouTube. MIT's Pathway to Fusion Energy by Zach Hartwig. There's a lot of technical solutions. If you watch the documentary with Bill Gates, again, he presents a solution to nuclear, but they talk briefly there about technologies that suck CO2 out of the atmosphere. There are lots of these technology solutions if there really is a problem. And people like Bill Gates are willing to invest in them, even though they won't see a profit short term in them. This guy says, donating now, thank you. Before the tax man steals my property, thank you again. Note, science is not consensus, just as objectivity is not consensus. Exactly. Science is about discovering the truth. Truth about the physical world. That's what science is. And Galileo did not achieve a consensus until way after he died. What's better, social democracy, Scandinavia, or free market dictatorship, monarchy, Singapore? I don't know. That's a tough one. I think social democracy. I think socialist democracy, certainly Scandinavia, although I don't think it's really socialist. I think Scandinavia is better in some regards, but that's going away. So I think both models, or let me put it this way. It doesn't matter. Because I can't talk now. Both models are unsustainable. Both models result ultimately in less freedom. So Scandinavia, for example, the good thing about Scandinavia is you used to have social freedoms like free speech, but that's going away now with the whole rise of hate speech. So that's going away. Free market dictatorship, like Singapore, which is somewhat, I guess it's a dictatorship, but not totalitarian, just authoritarian, was good because it left your economic rights alone. But that's diminishing. So Singapore, there's more and more. When I was there, all they could talk about was how the government wants to intervene more in the economy, how the government wants to redistribute more in the economy, because neither model is a sustainable model. So both models move towards more statism. So neither's good. So it's not a question of what's better. Why fight for what's better rather than fight for what's good? And what's good is capitalism. What's good is freedom. What's good is respect for individual rights, our social freedom and our economic freedom, our freedom in our bedroom and our freedom in our boardroom. The reasons they have, the reason the environmentalists have chosen 12 years for doomsday is because the ITER fusion reactor will be operational in 15. This will be the end of the energy as poison story, and they know it. We cannot let them ignore innovation. I don't think that's why they chose 12 years. Maybe. That gives them too much credit. That assumes they know that. I doubt they know that. But yeah, technology is the solution. I don't know if that technology needs 15 years. For example, the Bill Gates solution doesn't need 15 years. It could be done in much less than 15 years. It's not an overarching solution like a fusion reactor, but it's a solution that could be deployed on a massive scale very, very quickly. It's basically nuclear power plants with no, which use the nuclear waste that is being stored up in all these waste facilities all over the world, and particularly over the United States, and could use that waste to produce nuclear energy. And there's tons of waste, and it would be relatively cheap to use that waste to create nuclear power. But now we won't know, because of Trump now, and Trump's trade policy, we won't know if it's a workable model or not. We'll have to wait until deregulation arrives in America and they let Bill Gates build a plant like this in the United States. But the likelihood of that is, even though the Energy Department is one of the better departments under Trump, it's still very, very unlikely they're going to let him build the reactor. But, you know, there's all kinds of technologies. ITR might be the solution. Small reactors developed at MIT. Bill Gates' solution, who knows? But that's the beauty of a free market. Unleash the innovative powers of the Bill Gateses of the world. Let innovation thrive at universities, at startups, at high-tech facilities all over the world, and let the best technology win. Or several technologies might win. All right, great. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you like what I'm doing, I'll just mention you can support what I do by going to yaronbrookshow.com/support. Your support makes these shows possible. Thank you for the support. You can also go to subscribestar.com/yaronbrookshow. And the one lesson from Greta that you should take is you need to take morality seriously. You need to take ethics, what's right and what's wrong. You need to take the idea that the world is black and white seriously. You need to bring passion to your argument, not attacks ad hominems, stupid passion, but passion informed by moral certainty and informed by facts. That's what wins. Passion informed by morality, a morality of individualism, not a morality of altruism, informed by facts, by truth, by reality, by reason. All right, have a great afternoon. Have a good rest of your weekend. Tomorrow, same time, same place, 3 o'clock here. We'll see what we talk about tomorrow.